I'm going to call this meeting to order, please.
I had talked to Pete before, and he said,
And the first thing on our agenda tonight is the administration of the office of oath to the commissioners elected during the 2019 annual municipal election. And we'll start off with Edward Shrosnowski, and Judge Catherine Hester is here to swear you in.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Edward Shanowski,
I, Edward Chinowski,
do proudly swear to carry out the responsibilities
do proudly swear to carry out the responsibilities
of the office of Commissioner
of the Office of Commissioner
of the City of Rehoboth Beach,
of the City of Rehoboth Beach,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
freely acknowledging
freely acknowledging
that the powers of this office
that the powers of this office
flow from the people
flow from the people
I am privileged to represent.
I am privileged to represent.
I further swear
I further swear
always to place the public interest
always to place the public interest
above any special or personal interests,
above any special or personal interest,
and to respect the right
and to respect the right
of future generations
of future generations
to share the rich historic and natural heritage
and natural heritage
of Delaware.
of Delaware.
In doing so,
In doing so,
I will always uphold
I will always uphold
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of my country
of my country
and my state,
and my state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Edward. Next, Susan Gay. Need to move over to this area, yeah, so there you go.
I, Susan M. Gay,
I, Susan M. Gay,
do proudly swear
do proudly swear
to carry out the responsibilities
to carry out the responsibilities
of the office of Commissioner
of the Office of Commissioner
of the City of Rehoboth Beach,
of the City of Rehoboth Beach,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
freely acknowledging
freely acknowledging
that the powers of this office
that the powers of this office
flow from the people I am privileged to represent.
flow from the people I am privileged to represent.
I further swear
I further swear
always to place the public interest
always to place the public interest
above any special or personal interests,
above any special or personal interest,
and to respect the right
and to respect the right
of future generations
of future generations
to share the rich historic
to share the rich historic
and natural heritage of
and
Delaware.
natural heritage of Delaware.
In doing so,
In doing so,
I will always uphold and defend
I will always uphold and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of my country
of my country
and my state.
and my state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, Susan. And now we'll move right into the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Congratulations. And can you just please let the record show that all 7 commissioners are present, please? And before we go into the election of officers, I want to, we've just sworn in our 2 new officers, or excuse me, 2 new commissioners, and I want to again thank the previous 2 commissioners, Commissioner Stan Mills, who is in the audience, as well as Commissioner Tony Sharp, for the years of great service to the city. And I've spoken to both of them, and I look forward to them serving at different capacities within the city in the future. So thank you very much, Stan. With that, the next thing on the agenda is the election of officers. And let me just go down the list of the nominations for the officers. First, as Vice President, would be Commissioner Pat Caluzzi. As Secretary, Commissioner Lisa Schlosser. As Assistant Secretary, Ann Womack. As Treasurer, Priscilla Smith. And as Assistant Treasurer, Paula Simpson. If I can get a motion and a second to approve the election of these officers.
I so move the election of the stated officers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to elect these officers that have been mentioned. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. We'll move right into the resolution relating to the opening of bank accounts. Lisa has it, sorry.
Would you like me to read the whole thing?
That would be great, please.
All right. Resolution number 091901, date September 20th, 2019, resolution. Be it resolved that the treasurer of the city of Rehoboth Beach be and she is hereby authorized to open and maintain a bank account in any bank authorized to do business in the state of Delaware, which has an office within 5 miles of the corporate limits of the city of Rehoboth Beach. And be it further resolved that Paul G. Coons, Mayor of the City of Rehoboth Beach and President of the Commissioners of Rehoboth Beach, and Patricia A. Caluzzi, Vice President of the Commissioners, or either of these 2, and Priscilla Smith, Treasurer of the City of Rehoboth Beach, or Paula Simpson, Assistant Treasurer of the City of Rehoboth Beach, shall be authorized signatories of any bank account opened by the Treasurer. And be it further resolved that checks, drafts, notes, and other instruments or documents drawn on the city's accounts may bear the fax signature of Paul G. Coons, Mayor of the City of Rehoboth Beach and President of the Commissioners of Rehoboth Beach, and that fax specimens of each signature shall be filed with banks where the city deposits its funds.
Thank you.
A motion to approve the resolution.
Yeah, can I get a motion to approve the resolution that was just read, please?
I move to approve the resolution that was just read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution relating to the opening of bank accounts. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next is to consider a vote of the commissioners to accept the following consent, or the consent agenda, which details the following minutes that have been approved, that have been put forward. The first is the executive session, July 16th, 2019, July 19, 2019, the regular meeting, and then the following are special meetings. The first, December 20, 2018, May 6, 2019, June 21, 2019, July 8, 2019, July 16, 2019, July 26, 2019, and August 5th, 2019, and September 9th, 2019. If I can get a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve the consent agenda of the various different minutes that were compiled. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain because I was not a commissioner at the time.
Okay,
The same for me, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Motion carries. Let's see, we go into the city manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, a letter was sent to Connie Holland, Office of State Planning Coordination, requesting a one-year extension of the due date of the comprehensive plan. That date extension is till June 30th, 2020. There will be public meetings held in the near future to continue the important work of the both the Planning Commission and the mayor and commissioners for this. So that letter was sent today.
Sharon, excuse me, why are we requesting a one-year extension for that? Can you just kind of give me a little bit of the public, a little bit of the justification? So we're asking for a year extension. It was due
Yep.
this year, and we're asking for a year.
So a year extension is not unusual. Most municipalities often do need an extension.
Okay.
In the city of Rehoboth Beach, in our case, we did put out survey questions to three different customer bases, if you will, and those results from the survey portals of the three individual ones were recently closed. The consulting engineer, KCI, Debbie File, who's heading up this project, she plans to hold a survey data reveal to disclose the information that's contained in the survey. There were many surveys that were returned, which is good news. So in order to compile that data, it does take additional time to do that. And like I said, it's not unusual.
Okay, thank you.
The Silver Lake Bridge Lighting Rehabilitation Project is for the replacement in kind of the existing ornamental lighting system that is currently damaged and out of date. The project intends to replace the existing light fixtures, the wiring, and bring the entire lighting system into compliance with the National Electric Code. The work is scheduled to begin on September 30th with work hours from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m., weekdays only. And there will be daytime intermittent lane closures with flaggers when the conduit is run through this area. Project is expected to take 2 to 4 weeks for completion, and of course, the work is weather dependent. The 2020 street paving project is out to bid. A mandatory pre-bid meeting was held September 12th, and 6 different contractors attended the meeting. The work involves furnishing all labor, materials, transportation, tools, supplies, and equipment necessary for roadway repairs, and that includes the milling, the patching, the paving, concrete repairs, and incidental work. Sealed bids will be received until 2 p.m. Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019, when they'll be opened. Excuse me. Last Tuesday, bids were opened for the 2019 Rehoboth Beach to Dewey Beach Nourishment Project. 3 bids were received. The low bid was from Great Lakes Dredge and Dock in the amount of $7.2 million for the base bid, plus another approximately $1 million for all of the sand options included in the bid pack. This was substantially lower than the other 2 bids, and the U.S. Army Corps communicated with Great Lakes, learned that they are currently working in Cape May, and hope to mobilize directly to Delaware to complete this job. And that's one of the reasons for the low bid. They were close by, they can come here. The Army Corps is working as quickly as possible to generate a contract and notice to proceed, with a goal of issuing this in early October, so they should be here within a month. Work would be expected to commence right away, and the anticipated duration of sand pumping is approximately 4 weeks. As we know, they have typically gone from north to south, so they would start here in the city of Rehoboth Beach and then go to Dewey Beach. Pre-bid meeting is scheduled for September 24th, next week, for the North Shores Meter Replacement Program. The contract is anticipated to start at the beginning of November, and the scope of work includes 1-inch or smaller meters to be replaced. There's approximately 300 of these. Of course, the affected property owners there in North Shores will be notified. The pipe rehabilitation project for the Delaware Avenue stormwater improvements is scheduled on Delaware Avenue from First Street to the Boardwalk, and the Boardwalk from Wilmington Avenue to Brooklyn Avenue. The contractor anticipates work beginning mid-October through the end of November, and again, affected owners and businesses adjacent to the property will be notified. Excuse me. Earlier this week, we had the beginning of the outfall pipe inspection, started this past Monday. The team had to actually demobilize the day after it started due to weather conditions, and the inspection is expected to resume operations next week. Phase 2 of the wastewater electrical upgrades, they have been advertised by the county, as I mentioned last time. There's a mandatory pre-bid and a site visit meeting scheduled for next week, September 26th. Very proud that the Rehoboth Beach Police Department 911 Center is now home to a tri-accredited emergency dispatch center. This underscores the center's high standards and excellence in 3 disciplines, including emergency dispatch, law enforcement, fire, and EMS. The first center in Delaware, and only one 13 nationwide, to achieve a triple accredited center of excellence status through the National Academies of Emergency Dispatch. This is a huge accomplishment for the staff, and they're credited for reaching the goal that not only accomplishes prioritized emergency response and technical capabilities, but also the customer service provided there. And the center receives approximately 76,000 calls annually. And on another very happy note, the Rehoboth Beach Police Department and the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company, in partnership with Jeff and Ken Derrickson, who started a Memorial Scholarship Foundation, we're pleased to announce the 2019 inaugural recipient is Claire Sullivan. She received a $5,000 scholarship on Friday, September 6th in the city here. The scholarship fund was established by Betsy Baumeister and Bob Derrickson to honor the lives of their sons, Ken and Jeff Derrickson, twin brothers who died at very young ages. The purpose was to, obviously, for their parents never to forget the support and care from Rehoboth, the first responders to each of their sons. Claire is the daughter of Rehoboth Beach Police Department Lieutenant Will Sullivan, and she attends the University of Delaware. The mural project that is currently finishing up right here, artist Brett Steves is putting the finishing touches on the new mural outside of the Convention Center on the east side. And the mural is a great addition to the City Hall campus. It's very meaningful to the city, and it's a very impactful piece of art. We thank Brett Steves for doing this. It took him 2 weeks, and he's finishing up this project today. It looks great.
It's beautiful, I think. It's really beautiful mural.
And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you want to do street aid expenditure?
I do want to do street aid. We have one street aid expenditure dated September 19, 1919, to Delmarva Power in the amount of $9,079.29 for streetlights.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve street aid expenditures of $9,079.29 to Delmarva Power. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The city solicitor says that he does not have anything else. There, a couple of minutes ago, I looked up and I saw one of our officers of the state here, and now she is disappeared. Our state auditor, former Commissioner Kathy McGinnis, sorry, was here a moment ago. She may be right outside. I'll recognize her when she comes in. Okay, moving on, let's see. I believe, did you want to speak, David, on the Planning Commission? Okay. Susan Gay?
Okay, yeah, thanks. The city manager just reported that we had requested a one-year extension for the CDP deadline, and I just want to provide some additional details of what was discussed at the meeting, Planning Commission meeting last Friday. That was my last meeting as a planning commissioner. Yes, as the city manager said, these kind of extensions are not uncommon. And for us, we have just completed the survey as of August 30th, and they're still in the process of inputting the data. It will be revealed in a joint meeting of the commissioners and the Planning Commission sometime in October. This morning, I got the total results from the survey, and they're really quite impressive in terms of citizen involvement. The community survey, which is the one designed for property owners to complete, we had 686 responses. The visitor survey, and that's all visitors, whether they live 100 miles away or 1 mile away, is 369 responses, and the business survey, 68 responses. I think this will be an important step in the public process of the CDP, but it can in no way replace the public workshops that are still to come. And that is one of the main reasons for the extension, is to allow time for the most important part of the process, which is the public workshop and the public input to go on for some months, because we hope to have a workshop or two in the fall, but we'll have to continue more of them next spring. We could probably have one with the businesses in the winter, but we would want to continue the process into next spring. There was one other thing I was going to say about it. What is it? The input that comes as a result of having people here in person, just can't be overstated. It's one of the most valuable parts of the process. So we're lucky to have all of these written surveys, but it's one piece of the puzzle. We were able to do 2 workshops this summer, one on mixed use and the other one on sea level rise. The other workshops will come as a result of the survey. In other words, we don't really know what the workshops are going to be until we know what the public has said is important to them. So stay tuned.
Well, thank you. Okay, we're going to move right down to committee reports. Anything, Dick, animal issues?
I do, and let me just reflect back to the city manager's report briefly and congratulate the city manager and her incredible team in the 911 Center for this award and recognition. It's really awesome for this group to be recognized for this quality level of work, and so thank you for all that you and the center
Certainly, thank you.
do on behalf of all the citizens in this large area. It goes far beyond the city of Rehoboth Beach. To the Animal Issues Committee, the committee met on September 16th. A couple of highlights. The committee has requested the city to add some additional signage on the Turtle Bridge at Silver Lake. We have an ongoing problem of many folks feeding the wildlife, and while that's fun, it's cute, it's interesting, it's a real detriment to the wildlife and to the natural environment there. And so we're taking a look at appropriate signage beyond what we have. We don't want to clutter the area with signage. We want to be able to recognize the beauty of the natural environment there, but we somehow have to better communicate to folks that it is not appropriate to be feeding the wildlife there. So we've gone on record and requested that we take a look at what can be done. And one of the things that the city manager has indicated is that during the season, we'll have one of our summer bicycle officers patrol that area on a more frequent basis to simply remind people of what the best practice is. The Animal Issues Committee is continuing to do a review of Chapter 88, the Animal Code. We have gone through it several times and are in agreement of a number of changes that need to be made in that code to get it up to date. I'll be meeting with the solicitor in a couple of weeks to go over our draft suggestions, make sure that we're doing things in a legal sort of way. Once that gets resolved, then that information will be coming in the next couple of months to the Board of Commissioners. And a number of people have asked our Animal Issues Committee if we have or should or might respond to the recent issue of dogs on restaurant patios and in beer gardens and so on. There was some debate about what the law is and what the Department of Public Health had asked restaurants to do and or not do. The Animal Issues Committee took no formal action earlier this week, however, confirmed HB 275 that Representative and Speaker Schwarzkopf has developed and will come up in the House of Delegates in early January. It's a bipartisan bill that has support all across the state to allow dogs on restaurant patios where the owner of the restaurant is in agreement. It does not change any of the sanitation or quality standards for those restaurants. And I think that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Bandstand
Just
convention
really,
hall?
yeah, Mayor, just really quick. First of all, I just want to add my congratulations to Ed and Susan. I really look forward to serving with you. Bring a lot of great ideas to the commission. And Stan, I'm going to miss you. I really am. But thanks for all your service. I'm quite sure that we'll see you a lot anyway. The other thing I wanted to mention specifically about the Bandstand Convention, we do have our next meeting on Monday, September 23rd at 11 o'clock here in this room. We'll be talking about, some proposed hourly rates, which was a request from the chamber. So we'll be looking at hourly rates and then coming to the full board here with a recommendation on what those should be. And the second thing is we've been we have a group, a small group looking at the convention center, where we need to go with the convention center, what kind of investments we may want to make in the convention center. So we'll be getting a report on the status of that on Monday. Stephen, who runs the convention center, and by the way, Sharon, he does an outstanding job from everything I've heard. He's a great customer service rep. So thank you for having him so engaged there. He's awesome. He just reported to me that we've actually, as of, I think this week, exceeded the number of bookings that we had last year. So things are going really well there. So thanks for everything you're doing and he's doing. And that's the update, Mayor, from our committee.
Okay, thank you. Former Commissioner Mills, anything from Boardwalk and Beach, please?
Glad you reminded me of my last name. I was going to introduce myself as Stan McGinnis. Thank you. If I can, I'd like to go back to something just very quickly, Mayor, and that's to augment what Commissioner Byrne indicated about feeding animals and stuff. This summer, Marcia and I caught a goose. If you were over on Lake Gerard, there were 2 adult gooses that had 4 or 3 other goose. And one of them got a fish hook caught in his throat, and then the monofilament went down his throat. So we were able to catch it and send it up to Tri-State, where they had to do surgery. It wasn't a matter of just pulling out the line. They had to cut it open and everything, and they restored it and brought it back here. And it was kind of exciting because when they brought it back, we found its other siblings. And when we opened the crate, the other siblings said, "You're back, you're back." And they ran up to it. It was a great sight. But it does remind us, I don't know if you frequented the Lake Gerard Bridge or not, but there are actually mostly kids that are fishing for goals or whatever. And so some education, I think, would be warranted. Thank you for that little aside. As far as being chair of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee, I just wanted to share with you, our last meeting was scheduled this last Monday. We had to cancel it because we did not have a quorum. The next meeting is yet to be scheduled because the next meeting serves on Columbus Day, and we're looking to reschedule it. What I would like to point out to the council and everybody else is that if you go to the agenda for the last Boardwalk and Beach Committee meeting, you will find a link in there. It's a link rather than embedded 2 slideshows because it's over 700 slides of a trip to 20 boardwalk towns that former Commissioner Jay Legree and I took in late July. They're all labeled from northern town in New Jersey to south, all the different towns, Atlantic City and Cape May and Little Orkney Beach, that for comparison purposes, I think is very valuable and will serve value. So the next meeting of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee is intending to look at those slides and group them so we can see what are some things that Rehoboth may want to do to be competitive and what are some things we may not want to do. So I would invite you to go back and take a look at that. So that's it right now, other than to say one of the keys to the success and productivity of the Boardwalk Committee is soliciting input for agenda content from all the city departments and the mayor and commissioners and city manager and the public. And that worked well when we first started, January 2018, I believe. And so I would like to suggest that we do that again and have that committee put out a solicitation to everybody so that we can develop some worthwhile agendas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Law oversight. I see one of our members here. Would you like to say anything? Okay. Mayor's advisory on trees. You have anything?
I do, yes. There's a lot going on with the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Trees, which is very effectively chaired by former Commissioner Sharp, who's not here today, so I'm going to give the update. Last month, the city manager mentioned the start of the Commemorative Tree Fund, which is being reactivated after some years of not having it, and I want to thank the city manager and also the communications director and their staffs for all of the publicity that they've done on the program so far. It's been very successful. As of today, we have 11 forms filled out with donations to the fund for a total of $6,950. That will go toward the planting of trees on Rehoboth Avenue this fall. So the way the tree fund works is that it does not earmark a specific tree for the donor. There are 3 levels of donation, and I won't go into all the details because it is not only in the brochure, it is on the city website, front and center on the home page. You can click and find all of the information as well as the donation form to fill out right online, and you can email it in. But the arborist plan is to have a different part of the city where the trees are planted each season. So the ones that are purchased this fall will go on Rehoboth Avenue. If you want to be part of that initial launch, we would need to have your contribution by September 30th, so just 10 days from now. And the other big thing that's happening is that in October, probably in conjunction with celebration of the mural, is going to be the unveiling of the sculpture of this wonderful multi-limbed sculpture of a tree that'll be attached in the lobby, in the wall downstairs, and it will have the various leaves from donors that will grow over time into a very colorful tree, we hope. And we will have a celebration for that unveiling sometime in October. The program itself is ongoing, so when I mention deadline, it's not as though it's this and done. We hope to have it years in the future. So if you miss out this fall, then it's an ongoing program. You can donate at any time. The other things I have to update are just a couple of other programs we have going on. On October 21st, which is a Monday at 10 a.m. in this room, we're having a program by a well-known speaker, Doug Talamay, who is a professor in the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology at the University of Delaware. And he is going to be talking about why our trees, yards, and gardens are essential parts of our ecosystem that sustain us and how we can use these landscapes to connect the isolated habitat fragments, including wildlife, to us. It is time to create landscapes that enhance local ecosystems rather than degrade them. And I think it's a very timely talk, and that will be, as I said, in this room on October 31st. In addition to that, we are discussing with the city arborist plans for a pruning workshop sometime in October, where we'll all get tips on how to best prune our yards, but at the same time, we'll be pruning the plants within the city hall, on the city hall property, and doing some good for the city. And then finally, preparations are already underway to celebrate Arbor Day next spring with the planning. It's our 30th year as a tree city in the state. We're the second oldest tree city in the state. And the plan is to plant 30 trees in honor of our 30th anniversary. Some of them will be saplings from a large oak tree on Henlopen Avenue to bring new life into new parts of the city. And some of them will be more grown, but larger oak trees. But the plan is to use canopy trees to help restore the canopy in the city that will be on public property in the city. That's it, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Parking advisory, I know there's nothing, okay. Streets and transportation, I don't think there's anybody from that committee.
Mayor, could I just make a quick comment about the new committee that is not on the list yet? This body has approved that we go forward to develop a committee that's going to focus on the natural environment. And so I just want everyone to know that that is moving ahead. We are beginning to shape that up and define what it is and define a mission for it, and Commissioner Schlosser and I will be the commissioner liaisons to that committee, and we are seeking citizens. And so you can go on the website now, find a couple of paragraphs that define what that committee is at this point in history, and fill out an application to the city to be on that committee. We also have a press release that'll be going out within the next few days, encouraging folks to take a look at this new committee. So we do want a broad array of citizens and business folks, so on, that have a variety of kinds of interests, expertise, background in the broad natural environment to participate with this group. Thank you.
You're welcome. Move on to liaison reports. Carol, there she is. I thought you walked out.
Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to report on, we had a downtown advisory task force meeting yesterday. And that is a task force under the Rehoboth Dewey Chamber. We don't meet to meet. We meet when there's an issue. We've had to meet twice this year. Yesterday was basically on parking. We had invited representatives of the parking committee to certainly be there, or the city if they could be, to hear what was said directly from the business community, not from me, but right from the business's own voice. There were about 42 businesses that came to the meeting. If there was a unified agreement of worry, it was that the visitor was very unhappy with the fact that they can't extend. We heard it over and over again. So they pay their parking. We certainly hear this at the visitor center and at the chamber. I come into town to go to the beach, and 3 hours isn't really enough for me if I go to the beach and I want to do something else. I come into town in the evening, and I want to go to dinner, and maybe I have to wait for dinner, and then I have dinner, and then I have to get in my car. They basically do not want to move their car. I had no complaint, and I didn't have one business complain to me about the price. The price was not the issue, it's moving the car. So I think there's an opportunity here to think about allowing them to extend and let them pay. I know that there was some confusion, and I think it was originally an effort to assist the business community. I do think the Parking Advisory Committee was trying to do that also. It just didn't work with the extension part in particular. I know from years ago that started because the parking fees were low. And there was a fear that if they let them out there all the time, the employees would park there. Well, at today's prices, the employees aren't going to do that. So that's basically gone away. They're not going to pay, $2 or $3 an hour to work the day. So I think it really was a very good meeting. Everyone spoke out. I'm happy to have another one if we need it, but I think we walked away with, if we could simplify the system somehow, if we can let people extend so they can stay and shop and stay at the beach, those types of things, that was the main thing that we walked away with. The fee was not an issue, which surprised me. but it was not an issue.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you,
Carol,
Carol.
just real quick, since we have the individuals that are working on the signage, I understand that that was a second discussion point. Can you just kind of give us, just as we're getting ready to hear an update on anything we should be aware of?
I'm anxious to
there.
hear that, too. You know, we've been to simplify and identify, so that the system, the easier it is to operate, and the easier it is to know where to park. And, you know, it's our experience at the chamber that I can give people a lot of words, and they only read so much, but they remember symbols. So if I don't know what the wayfinding is going to look like, I'm anxious to see, but they do remember a symbol. I'm parking in the, you know, the green beach ball area is long-term, something like that. And that was another issue that came forward was if there is an area that can be long-term, even longer than extending, that's a possibility too. Employee parking is a problem. Whose problem that is everybody's. But it's the signage, simplify and identify, let them extend, and the price does not seem to be an issue.
Sorry, last thing, I just got feedback from some of the business owners. I was walking around this morning on that meeting, which they really appreciated, by the way. Thank you for doing that. There seemed to be some feedback, which I was going to bring up in Commissioner's comments since you were at the meeting, on those vehicles that are going up and down the streets that are checking license plate, or check. Can you kind of give us just what the sense is from the group yesterday? I've heard some things as well, so I'd just like to hear from your group.
I'm glad you said that because I forgot to tell my personal story, and it lends right to that.
Okay.
First off, what the businesses are saying is it's difficult for people, it's new system, so they're not aware, and they may be coming from another area and they're not aware, and that can happen again next year. So they pull up to the parking spot. They must go to the meter pay station, okay? And when they get there, they discover they need their license number. And one thing that was brought out by several of the businesses was our license numbers are fairly short, but in other states they are not. So that was an issue. This remembering issue, walking back and forth was an issue. My personal story was I got 2 tickets this year. One I absolutely deserved. I was on the boardwalk with the TV station, and I didn't get back in time, and I got a ticket, and I went and paid it. But about 10 days ago, I was on Baltimore Avenue. I was having dinner with my husband, and we pulled up to a meter station. It had a handwritten sign on it that said, "Pay at next station, pay at next station." So my belief was, well, we could pay at any station, but it didn't say that. It said next station. So I said, well, pick one. He did. And I said, I bet we're going to get a ticket. So we came out. Sure enough, there was a ticket. At this point, we believed we did it because we paid the wrong meter. I said, well, it must make a difference now. I know. So I said, well, let's play tourist. So I gave it to my husband, and I said, where are you going to go to pay this? He says, P.O. Box number so-and-so, whatever's on the envelope, because the address wasn't on the envelope. He flips it over. No address on the envelope. I said, oh, boy. So we're on Baltimore Avenue. If you don't know, and he didn't know, he's been to Sazio, so he should have known, but he didn't, that right there was the parking permit area. So I gave him direction to get down there. We got in line. We still think that we got a ticket because we paid at the wrong station. That's what we believed. We got in there. We got in line. The lady was very nice. And she said, let me see your ticket. We showed her. And she said, no, you can pay at any meter. So that was right on Baltimore Avenue. She said, but there's a glitch in a delay in the time you pay Park Mobile and the time that it may get enforced. She said 4 to 6 minutes. We had gone in at 5:21. We got a ticket at 5:25. Now, she was great. She avoided the ticket immediately, apologized for it, but that was a surprise to us. I didn't know there was a delay, and I knew that it kind of explained some of the complaints we had gotten over the summer. So I don't know whether, it just doesn't show, like when you use your credit card, it'll say payment pending. I don't know if it just doesn't show on the device that the enforcement officer's using. The only other thing about the enforcement that was said to me was they tend to go back and forth in the car on those small streets, and it backs it up. Other than that, so is that enough for you?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I had heard that also about the 5 to 6 minute delay, and then the vehicles that are checking the license
Yeah,
plates.
so there's some kind of little glitch there
were
yeah.
concerned. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. And obviously, the parking meters are all down now, so it gives us another 6 or 8 months to look into all of these things and find solutions where there are issues. Main Street, Ed, anything you want to talk about?
Let me just, I'll give it a couple quick updates. We recently hired Dan Slagle as our new executive director. He was the general manager of the Tea and Spice Exchange. If you haven't met him yet, please reach out. He's fantastic, energetic, and is really passionate about helping the downtown area thrive. Just a couple other minor updates. I've resigned as president, and the board has elected Greer Manival, who is an architect and a pretty historic preservation savvy person, so we're happy to have her on the board. And we have one additional new board member, Bob Cartwright, the owner of the coffee mill. So we're excited.
That's great.
You might mention you resigned not out of any kind of animosity, only so you can handle this
So
job
I
and
can
not have any
focus
kind of
more
conflicts.
time here
Right,
with,
right.
with city business. Yeah.
Thanks.
We appreciate that focus. Dick, anything on the senior center?
No, nothing.
Okay. We're going to move into old business, which is confirmation of placement of 2 historical markers by the Village Improvement Association, VIA Historical Marker Placement Proposals.
If you like, Mayor, I'll try to give the story, and you can help out if you like. At the time, 1 or 2 meetings ago, Barbara Beatty, representative from the VIA, came here in front of council. And of course, at that time, I was a council member. And she asked to partner with the Delaware Public Archives, the Historical Marker Division, in order to place 2 historical markers in the city of Rehoboth Beach. One near the Boardwalk at Rehoboth Avenue, and one up near the lighthouse. At that time, the mayor tasked me with trying to manage a meeting with all the responsible parties to figure out exactly where these would go. And this is the culmination of that meeting. This is, of course, the typical historical marker that the state uses. This one was actually facilitated by the VIA and is down near the fishing bridge at the base of Lake Gerard Bridge, installed, about a year and a half ago. And you also see these throughout the state, but there's another one in front of the library, and you'll see a picture here in front of the, near the Women's Christian Temperance Fountain there. So one of the locations that they looked at was the foot of Rehoboth Avenue along the boardwalk. And you can see this is facing east from the bandstand. The bandstand's to the back of the photo here. You can orient yourself where the Women's Christian Fountains is in the center of Rehoboth Avenue, right in this location. And here's Candy Kitchen. Here's the existing marker highlighting the Temperance Union Fountain. If we go to the left of there, just looking to the north of that area, we come across kind of the same visage, but to the left of that. And what I wanted to show you is possible locations where the sign could go. When we met, it was Barbara Beatty of the VIA, it was 3 other representatives from the VIA, lady from the Delaware Public Archives, Mayor Paul Coons was there, myself, and Kevin Williams and Mike Peterman from both from Public Works were there. So we looked at kind of this area and kind of using, I guess, some of my guidance. We looked at some of these areas here. In the foreground here where the historical marker is, obviously we're not going to put anything there. So we look to the right, there is a little island here of dirt and mulch landscaping area that's a possibility. We thought that's probably too close to the other one. On the right-hand side over here, there's some vegetation where something could go. However, if you look and if you recall, on the very right side over here, there's electrical boxes. So the possibility of placing something in that location was minimal because of underground wires. So then we went to the left side there, and we found that there's a little landscaped area right in front of the bus stop. There's another landscaped area here. And finally, there's a landscaped area here that has the same problem as on the south side. It's got all these electrical boxes and really no possibility of digging anything up there without hitting the electric wires. So we had the gentleman bring a painted piece of cardboard, and they held it up there. You can see where this was ultimately where the proposed location came up with for the historical marker on the boardwalk. I'd just like to share a little story that while we were talking, the Barbara Beatty indicated, that she likes this. They all like the location. However, Barbara Beatty said at the beginning she was really envisioning it from the beginning on the ocean side of the boardwalk. And so my suggestion to council as chair of the boardwalk committee is that because of some of our guiding principles for the boardwalk committee is aesthetics and the view shed, is that in the future we develop a policy or be cautious about how many signs we put on the ocean side of the boardwalk. Because if you recall now, that the only signs we have on the ocean side of the boardwalk are rule signs, and then there's one water quality sign, I think. But the maximum height of that is just waist high, for instance. So anyhow, that's a little aside. So this is the proposed location at the boardwalk area, and what it does is it almost gives you a symmetry of the existing fountain sign and then this new marker sign that's to identify a surf safety line that was erected in the early 19th century and funded by the VIA. Any questions on that location? If not, we'll go to the second location. This is up by the circle. I probably should have given you an overhead, but if you can locate yourself to the back of the photo taker is the Royal Farm. And then looking forward up on the left side is Rehoboth Avenue. Here's McQuay's Market right here. Behind you here is the Visitor Center and the museum and Grove Park here. And this is maybe a little better picture showing the placement, again with Grove Park in the background and the sign in this location. So one of the questions asked by the VIA of the Delaware Public Archives was of this location in particular, wouldn't it be better to rotate it 90 degrees so that you could see the front and back of it? And the response was no, DelDOT requires all these signs to parallel the streets. And so that's why it's that location. So it's still going to be a double-sided sign, but it's going to be parallel to the street. And the thought was, if it piques your interest and you're in a vehicle, then hopefully you're going to pull over and stop and park and go take a look at it. So that's all I have. Any questions of me? If not, I'm going to turn it.
Fantastic job. I think both locations are great. Will the one across from the lighthouse, will that be high enough that you'd be able to see it from the parking lot? Will it be high enough to clear those shrubs back there?
I doubt it, and I'm just saying this off the cuff that they all have specific heights and parameters. So what it is, it's a dictate. We don't have any say so in the height of it being, start at the bottom, starting here, going up or not. So it's largely viewable only from the street, most likely.
Yeah,
Or from the side,
If
or
you're
from
walking on the
walking,
sidewalk.
Or on the
or from
sidewalk,
walking
yes.
in that area,
Yeah.
correct.
And what Stan mentioned about DelDOT having them to be parallel to the street, it's because DelDOT funds these signs for the archives. And so they have certain requirements and protocol. And I think one of them is the height, but also the way the signs focus. Any other questions?
When will he be installed? Do we know?
They were aiming for the before the end of the year, I believe.
For one. The one on the boardwalk, I think they're aiming for December, and then this one, I believe in May. They have some kind of an anniversary of something, and that's, bless you, that's what the second one would be. But they will not be going up at the same time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? We'll move into new business. John? Presentation and discussion by Merge Design on a draft wayfinding design and necessary steps to move the project forward.
I love the mock-up stand, by the way. It's like perfect design process. And hopefully we're getting to that point with our project as well. That's right. He's been part of our committee, so he's awesome. Again, I'm John Bozzi. I'm with Merge. We are the consultant working on the wayfinding program. I'm just going to give you a little update on where we are with it and talk definitely the parking. We're on symbols, so we're there as well. We came to this project not only through the parking, which was the Parking Advisory Committee was going to be doing, was looking at parking signage, but we've been working with the Southern Delaware Chamber Convention Visitors Bureau on a project on Route 1. And those projects sort of came together, and that project is still moving along, but it was always developed that we would develop a wayfinding program for Route 1, and then that could be extended into Rehoboth Beach, as well as Lewis, which we are going to be starting in October. So they're coming on board as well to really create a wayfinding program for the whole region that ties it together for the visitor, and that's who we're really looking to do. So the signs you see here, this is really the Route 1 sort of schematic designs for that. And then as it moves into the downtowns, you can have smaller, sort of lower speed scale signs, and then also pedestrian parking and kiosks, which we'll look at today. One thing we always want to point out is that wayfinding is not new to Rehoboth Beach. It's out there. You have signs, you don't have a sign system. So there's all kinds of things out there. And really the idea of this program is to, a lot of that stuff comes down. We're not trying to add more. We're trying to organize it, make it more consistent, and make it more of a sequence of information. So if you think about wayfinding, you always think about it as big picture in. So you arrive at the city of Rehoboth Beach, and then as a visitor, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the visitor center. If you haven't been here before, you might go to the visitor center, or you may have to go to the parking department to get your permit, and then you're going to make your way to the parking lot. You get out of your car, and now I become a pedestrian, and I move on to my destination. So the analysis looked at, how do we come in? You would think this is actually a really easy wayfinding issue in Rehoboth Beach. You come down the main street and then you go left or right, but then you realize that no, during different seasons, there are certain left turns that you can't make anymore. So how do you sign for different seasons? So that's something that we've been working along as we look at sort of the wayfinding issue. I think really the number one issue that came out of our discussions with staff and stakeholders was parking. And we talked about that at length. And for us, we needed to understand, how does parking work here? Just running out there and putting up new parking signs everywhere is not going to solve the problem. What I kept saying to everybody is you don't have a parking sign problem. You have a communications problem. And that you need to let people know before they arrive what the parking situation is. And someone in our meeting said, no matter when you come to Rehoboth Beach, or no matter what, you're paying for parking. You're either paying for a permit, you're paying to park in a parking lot, or you're paying at the meter. So one way or the other, you need to be informed of that before you arrived. So as you mentioned earlier, with a symbol, and that's what we think is really important to solving your parking communications issue, which is having an identifiable symbol that you can start to create a graphic language across many materials. So before I arrive, and you can see where it starts, before I get here, I sit down at my computer and I'm looking for information about Rehoboth Beach. And on the website, there is the symbol, and I can click on it and I can start to get information about what type of parking there is available to me. And then maybe I arrive and I go to the visitor center. And maybe there's a brochure there that reinforces it. Maybe I didn't look at the website, but now I'm at the visitor center, there's another opportunity. And then I get to the parking department and I get my permit. There's that symbol again. It's outside on the building or next to the entrance. I get my permit and we reinforce that. And then I move into the signage. So whether I'm trailblazing to a lot or trailblazing to what type of parking there is on the side streets, whether it's by permit or that I have to pay at the kiosk, we think, you continue to reinforce that symbol. Then you arrive, as we see down here, at the parking lot. If you were trying to give people direction to the parking lot that's associated with this building right now, you can't, right? There's no sort of indication that this is where I arrive. So again, reinforcing it, giving them information about, what the rules are. We think the change kiosks are another just great opportunity. You have people at that point, you've captured them, and not only do you tell them about parking, but I think you should tell them about what you can do while you're here, right? Really use it as a marketing tool. It's a information kiosk more so than just getting change. And I think with the Park Mobile, the change is probably a lesser thing as we move forward. So I think, repurposing that to a certain level of giving information about parking and what you can do while you're here. Pedestrian kiosks. So as you walk around and you're trying to get an orientation to where you are, which is a sort of a typical wayfinding kiosk, maybe there's a map of downtown, reinforce what that operation of parking is, that, that you have to have your, your license plate information and that sort of thing. So as we looked at this issue, our feeling always has been that you really need to take a symbol and really promote it across many different tools, and not just run around and put up signs with the symbol on it. So that's what we're working towards. Our big piece of this, obviously, is the signage component, but we want to help along with those other components as they're necessary. So when you look at sort of the strategy of getting to parking after you've gotten all that information, you're going to trailblaze to those parking areas. Just sort of this is where parking is. And then you're either going to direct somebody to a lot, you're going to direct them to a metered parking area or additional on-street parking down here. And then that could then move into where the permit parking zone begins. So when you've crossed over into that street, okay, now I need to have a permit in this area. So we're still, we're working through where that happens and how that works, but it's basically you're getting to a lot, you're getting to metered zone, or you're getting to additional parking or permit parking.
Do your signs have like QR codes or something that takes you to a mobile app, or that you can look at any kind of parking regulations or anything that,
Sure, you
that
could
you may have questions on?
you
Is
could
that part
integrate
of it?
that. Yeah, you could integrate that into the kiosk component where we communicate, or even the larger where the change machines are.
But not on the signs
Not
themselves?
not on that sign itself, because that's usually higher up where
Okay.
it's directing to.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But you could also put it on the brochure.
On the what?
If you have a parking, I think you really need to have a parking brochure at the visitor center. And that's another place that you want to go deeper into those regulations. That's a place you could have it and scan it in there too.
Okay, thanks.
We're looking at kiosks, and you'll see those in a moment, and those potential locations. So, and you'll see we start to locate signs, and that's something that we continue to go through with staff. So part of the wayfinding analysis was to look at, okay, what kind of signs are out there and what kind of signs make up this system. This is really just a generic look at the program, no design provided. Again, a lot of these signs, sign type wise, are out there, whether it's a gateway element or a vehicular directional sign, or just directing to parking up above on overheads. I think, more use of parking arrival at the two lots, whether it's this lot in the convention center over by the senior center, and then identifying that parking permit zone. We added in some things that are unique to Rehoboth Beach, was clearly identifying the parking department where you go get your permit. We added the change kiosk, and then pedestrian signs. So whether it's directional information or kiosks and then also bike and trail signage. One of the things we added, and we probably had it on an older photo, is that your street signs are really, really small. They're really small. So we said that, you know, again, this is sort of a master plan thing. These are all the things you can do. You know, just getting some of those signs as you're sitting at the light, you know, letting you know where you are. You have that benefit of sort of a infrastructure of wayfinding by numbered streets. So let's play that up. We went through a schematic design process that we reviewed with the steering committee as well as a number of stakeholders to get feedback. We had presented 3 design options. Again, this is taking a lot of cue from the Route 1 signage that we have been working with, but bringing in sort of the uniqueness of Rehoboth Beach with the city colors. So this was and all these have the same. So there's a vehicular, directional to parking, arrival at that parking lot, and then additional parking signs and kiosks. And we presented these 3 options. I mean, color-wise, we sort of kept with the Rehoboth Beach colors, had a little bit, you could see sort of the difference on the header portion of the sign panel, which changed. We also looked at what the pole material should be as well. We looked at the shape here was a little bit different where we have sort of the domed shape. And this, we sort of changed out the parking as a unique color. So in this case, you could see it's the orange and the blue throughout this design. With this one, we said, okay, let's make parking a little bit more unique. And then also bring in a lot of other symbols. So whether that's for parking or the boardwalk or the trolley stops and the beach, let's try and bring that into the system. I think it's a little bit more friendlier, a little bit more welcoming to start to use that as a component. The feedback that we got from that was that option 1 really was the basis for design. We weren't really trying to choose just one. We were just trying to get some feedback. So option 1 was the basis. The colors use more of the Rehoboth Beach brand colors, which we've brought into that. Simplify the parking arrival, that one that you saw with the big arrow, nobody liked that one, so that's okay. We simplified that and keep the city name on the front of the panel. In some of those options, we had it on the front, some we had it on the back or the side. So we incorporated those colors, we simplified the parking arrival, and the back of the panel is really just a simple graphic. We're down to really just option 4A and B, and they're minor changes, more to the material of the pole is one of the options we're looking at. So this is where we've landed. This is the vehicular directional signs that will direct to things like the convention center and the library. Having direction to additional on-street parking, as well as combining it with that information that we're directing to shopping and dining that's on like Baltimore Avenue, where we're trying to sort of pull people off. Simplified this design for the arrival. And then going to your point regarding the color coding, that was something we also brought in regarding the permit parking and some of the lots or the metered parking. That's a way to bring it in. I will mention that in general, color coding in the exterior environment isn't sort of the end-all, save-all for signage programs. Color coding when you're in a hospital or in a garage where you can sort of code it, that works really well. You really have to sort of start to promote this on other avenues, more than just signage for it to take effect. But we definitely want to sort of bring in that color coding in. And then we also had the information kiosk. So the information kiosk, we'll be going through a process as to what type of information should be on there, whether it's an interpretive panel that talks about history or orientation maps or additional parking information. I think all of that can be considered. I think really the only difference as we look at 4A and 4B, this is still 4A. We're looking at the concrete pole to match the existing street poles. You know, from a maintenance standpoint, it's awesome. I mean, when we talk to Public Works, that's a much better way of going about it. We have to look at, from a structural standpoint, there's also a cost standpoint that has to be analyzed as to if you should go with the concrete pole as we move through it. And here's sort of close-ups of directing to more on-street parking as well as shopping and dining, the parking signs, and the kiosk. This is 4B, which again, it's still similar. It's more of the material that we're using for the pole. We're going with an aluminum pole that is painted, and the brackets on the sign brackets were white. And then we had a little bit of a wave. I don't think we had that before on the other one, and we just didn't have as much color on this as well. In the kiosk. Having the, so again, trying to get that symbology into throughout the program, parking, information, recreational components.
John, is a sign like this one, is it lit up so that it shows after dark?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the program. The next step of this is to have those discussions. It's really just a little bit more of a cost issue than anything else, as well as if the location is near power existing.
Are there any that are solar powered?
You can do the solar powered. So we have done kiosks. We did them in Tampa that they are solar powered. They have a canopy on them. That can give you enough power for a small light to light it and shine on it. But to internally illuminate it, you need a little bit more power. So that'll be part of the discussion.
Thank you.
One of the things that I don't see, and I think I was expecting to, is more indication on short-term parking, long-term parking, where there's a limit, where there's 4 hours versus 10 hours or 12 hours.
So we're getting to the point where we've located signs, and this starts to show you a sign location plan, just a section of it. And that detail of where that information will appear, that will start to feed into the program based on that. This is more of a sort of bigger picture view, but where those limits are will be part of the messaging that goes on each sign.
So, John, as I look at the last page, which is the order of magnitude of cost, I'm assuming that what you're saying is the parking signage is between 30 and 40K, and then separately, the pedestrian trail signage is between 60 and 75? Is that what?
Correct.
Okay. So, and the gateway and vehicular signage is much more expensive. Are we looking at, or is the committee looking at prioritizing these, or are we looking at trying to do all of these at one time?
It's always been discussed as a phased project. I think this, what you see there are basically the phases of priority. We've always felt that parking was the most important thing, and because it was the lesser expensive, that as well. And then you move into, you sort of move, when you implement wayfinding programs, you start from the middle out, right? We also like to phase it in a way that you get a lot of function from the parking signage, where a gateway, it's nice element to have, but you're not getting a whole lot of function out of it. So pedestrian, again, having that by itself, you can't say I'm going to do one road but not another road. So you usually group it by the type of sign and move outward, and that's what this does.
It was, to answer your question, Pat, it was my impression that we were going to come forward with a proposal to do all the signage by next season, and look at the price. It looks to me like the price right now is between, can range from $170 to $205 if we went forward with all three of, kind of areas. That's basically the range. We have $30K right now in our current budget, plus I think $30K that the senator allocated towards us. So we already have $60K of that funding put aside. This does not seem to be something that we should piecemeal or phase in, just simply because of safety concerns, parking concerns, all those things. So for me, I would personally
we
like
broke
to
it out so
see-
you could see sort of the levels of it, but you could do the whole thing.
And if we chose, say we did choose to go forward with all three of these components, could you have this implemented by, Memorial Day next year?
When would the
Like the
funding
beginning of our
become-
season, May
Well,
30th?
when would the funding become available?
First, wouldn't it?
Some of the funding's available now. We've also had, and it depends how much of a priority this is. We, last year, we actually approved some things, in January, I believe, for the parking kiosks, because we had to move forward quickly. We also have, thanks to great management from Kevin and other members of Sharon's team, we actually have come in under budget on a few of our capital projects. I mean, so there's options to, when would you have to start this to
Yeah,
get
I
it
think,
done by May 31st would be
The
the
parking
question.
signage is relatively simple because they're small panels.
Okay.
A lot of it is going on existing poles. So I think if, worst case, April 1st, you got to go ahead to move forward. Depending upon if you could bid it prior to that, I think you could get some of the parking signage in by season start.
When would you have to know to do all of this by, and have it done by May 31st? Like when would?
I think you would have to know, you'd have to award a contract to a fabricator by January 1st.
By January
Yeah,
1st.
mainly because of, again, the parking sign and really the pedestrian trail is relatively simple. But when you start to get into the gateways and the vehicular signs, that's a little bit more of an effort with digging footers and that sort of thing. So I think you're going to need 4 to 6 months safety net to get the whole thing in.
Sharon, just a reminder, do I remember that we have grant money, or is it matching money, or what is the budget that we currently have?
So there was money available from Senator Lopez and some grant money possibility for the design, so where the phase we're in now. My intention, and one of the reasons John is bringing this forward now, is so we have this timeline that he's saying, it'll be in time for the budget discussions, the upcoming budget discussions. This can be bid out before the end of the year, and then we can have a final cost that we could, bring forward to the commissioners in the budget. I realize that's not going to fit with the January 1 timeline, but if it's possible to, often it is to work something out with the
Well, you could
individual-
structure the bid with an ad alternate.
Yes.
So you could have the base bid be for the amount, for the sign types that you know are going to fall into the amount you have now, and that can happen. And then the ad alternate can be added later once the additional funding becomes available, if that's sort of lagging some time behind.
So, Sharon, I have a question about our current capital improvement projects. If in fact we do have excess dollars there, is that something that could be brought to the commissioners to possibly vote on to use any of that money for this project?
That's not something that we typically do, as Mr. Williams, now who's in government funding, understands. But there are other options we can look at. Let me just say that. So if you have a balance in the restroom restoration fund, we don't usually transfer that amount of money to signage. It's not looked on favorably in government accounting. It's good that we have a surplus. The project came in under budget, and that money typically goes back into the general fund for the next year's discussion of additional CIP projects. But there are other avenues we can look at.
I would really like to see if, if everybody else, because to be honest, I thought we were actually starting to implement this last year before the season because we got that extra funding and we put it in the budget. So, I mean, I guess I would like to see, and we made all those changes to parking, which our discussion was, boy, let's make these changes, but let's communicate them. Let's make sure we have the new signage. I mean, that was the discussion last year when we made the changes. So to hear that this may be not ready for this year's season is a little concerning. So I think what I would like to see, like in the next meeting, is a plan to actually get all of this in place by May 31st, and then we can go from there. I mean, let's look at the costs, let's look at the implementation timeline, let's see exactly what it will take, and then make the decision with all that data and with a project plan in place.
Right.
We may decide that we're not going to do it, but right now, we're kind of operating, well, maybe this date, maybe that date, maybe
Right, this was
so
sort of
it'd be
this-
great to see a full plan, so we
Right.
can really decide where we want to go.
Yeah, so we started this in, I guess, like June is when we probably started the actual work on it. With this schedule, when Evan and I went over, it was to get that full plan ready by November. So when you have those budget discussions, you have the full plan ready to go. This was sort of the interim step to say, this is where we're going with it. This is sort of a general idea of how much it would cost, and then we'll have the final cost estimate, as you can see there in November.
I think it just seems that there's a little bit more of an acceleration required if we have to make a decision for this, for this to be done by the season, it has to be bid out by January 1st. So
But-
Oh, and I'm sorry, Mayor.
I
There are budget transfers, and certainly I can bring that forward.
okay,
I'm not saying that it can't be done.
Okay.
We'll look at other avenues in order, once the bid goes out and we award a bid.
Lisa, I would agree with you. I feel this is a priority project. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I think it's important for our visitors. And I think it will alleviate some of the issues we've had in the past with parking. And I think it'll just be really good for the city.
And I agree on what everybody said, and maybe we can push up the bid, and so that we have an idea of where we are on January 1st, but we have to remember, where's the money coming from? Yeah, we have a few dollars, but most of the dollars that we have now are gonna be paying for what John's doing right now. So that 170 to 200,000, we don't have just sitting around. Now, the city manager said that she's going to work to see if there's some way to do it, but, from an accounting perspective, it is frowned upon when you pull something out of this and put it into that. But I think this is something that at least we can probably get at least the first phase and maybe all 3 phases done by the end of the year, or excuse me, by the opening of the season. But I think we have to keep in mind, where's the money going to come from? And so
sure.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can say that I'm certainly in
Yeah.
agreement with this, and I'm wondering if we've explored all avenues with DelDOT, with Representative Schwarzkopf, some of those areas.
And I think that's the ongoing process. I mean, I think if we're looking at a time of, say, May 31st, and we're looking at maybe bids, opening them up around, or awarding them around January, there's stuff that we have to do between now and then. But I think those are possibilities as well.
So we would then likely need a plan at the October workshop.
Well, I don't know if we could have it that quickly.
But I don't either,
think-
but I'm just putting it out. If we're going to move toward a January 1,
Well, I mean, John, in order to have.
October 1st or October 31st?
Well, October workshop, which is the 7th.
Yeah, but in order to have a bid package or whatever put together by January 1st.
Right. There's more than today's a little bit more of a summary, but every sign, we figured out where every sign goes and all of that. So I probably can give you a pretty detailed amount of information for that workshop, yes.
Oh, good.
Oh, that'd be
very
great,
helpful.
yeah.
That'd be really helpful.
In October, which is like
For
2
the
weeks
October-
away.
Yeah. Like I said, we have more work that's been done. This is just sort of the summary of it.
Oh, that would be great,
Yeah.
yeah,
That would be helpful.
yeah, yeah.
And could you put that on the workshop for October 7th, I believe it is?
Do you want to take comments from the public, or do you want us to keep talking?
if you have some-
I just want to say, I remember when you first presented some months ago, and I think this is a wonderful project. I love the idea of a sign system instead of miscellaneous signs all over. I think it's great for the branding of the city, and as you talked about, the graphic language and the visuals, it's all just great. You had mentioned that we were finalizing the sign locations with city staff and committees. I can't remember, is there a separate committee for this, or are you working with Streets and Transportation, or how is that process of?
There's a steering committee, as well as we're working with parking, and then we're also going to be reviewing it with parking committee as well.
Okay, all right.
who's on the steering committee?
Yeah.
You know everybody's name more than I do.
Yeah, so the city manager, Mr. Williams, who's here today. We often have Bill Maffei there, our sign guy who's in charge of all signs throughout the city, communication specialist, and
Evan.
who am I forgetting?
Evan.
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 And Evan, of course, Mr. Miller.
Okay, all right.
City manager, I think it would be great if we had some, either someone from the Chamber of Commerce or some business folks involved in those discussions, people that hear the visitors that have problems parking day in and day out and understand sort of the concerns and the perspective of the people that are actually parking and are confused by the current signage and stuff like that. That
There
would,
was also a stakeholder group of beyond
Oh, there
that.
was.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
yeah, good.
Evan would have to give you the names of who was on that.
That's right.
Did you have something, Steve?
No, I'm completely on board with all of what's being discussed today. The faster and smarter we can move, the better off we'll be.
Great. Mr. Mellon, please come up. Is that on yet? I think she didn't turn that on.
Thank you. David Mellon, 105 Rodney Street. More an observation in question, because I'm all in favor of the signage. I'm sort of glad that I speak English and read English. And so my question really is, to what consideration? I'm thinking of my experience in Europe, where you have multiple languages and where there are more graphics that are universally understood. And to what degree can
Right.
we lean on those?
If you
Because
notice on option 4B, that was the one that we were heavily providing more pictograms as part of the system. So that's one component of it. And that's usually how we handle multiple languages. We're not allowed to put it on vehicular directional. If you want to go on the kiosk, you can add it, but the pictograms will be sort of a heavy component of it as we develop it.
the other observation is that, again, the experience in Europe, I'm often seeing as I enter a city, before I get to the city, large signs that show the pictographs so that I then know what I'm looking
Right.
for.
So, right. So
Because
the,
and I don't see that.
yeah,
here.
so that is also part of sort of the brochure system, as well as other signage that, you didn't see every single sign as part of the menu. There's multiple signs that will be incorporated, and that's where it comes up.
Thank you.
And also, David, to answer to that, John is working on with Southern Delaware Tourism and DelDOT about doing the same thing out on Route 1. And what they're trying to do is connect all of the communities, and as he said,
Universal signs.
yeah, and what he's saying is Lewis is already in the
Yeah, Lewis, we
process of
start in
doing it.
October, so.
Okay.
Like, what is the timing of the ones out on Route 1 and on Lewis? Are they going to be in place by next season?
Lewis, no, we're just starting our design process with them in October, so.
All right, yeah.
Are you anywhere?
You're first, don't worry.
Are you anywhere closer to things on the highway? Or is
No, that's more of a funding issue that
That's
Scott
what I
is
thought.
doing.
Okay,
But we have met with Delaware DOT probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago, I think.
good, great. Yes.
Jan Conacy, 42 Oak Avenue. I had an incident this summer when I was coming out of City Hall, actually. Ran into a young man who was maybe late teens, early 20s, college-age kid, and his girlfriend, who had been driving all over the city looking for a place to park with cash. And so he got to City Hall and thought these meters were cash, and they weren't. And so I walked him over to the parking, little kiosk, the parking building behind City Hall, and so he could find out where. And then I thought about, my own child who is in college and does not have a credit card. And so anybody, is there going to be signage that say like cash meters? Because I don't park in town. I walk, because the one incident I had when trying to figure out how to use the parking meters became such a trial. I just drove home, parked my car, and walked back. So I'm not even going to talk for myself, but I really worried about people who don't have credit cards, may not have one with them, because I thought about all of these, under a certain age, don't have credit cards, or under a certain income maybe. So will we have signs are there any meters that you can put money in?
Yes.
Yes.
So are they all grouped together somewhere? So we could direct people to them?
Not grouped together necessarily, but they're where we haven't actually gotten to them to replace.
Okay, so they will be none eventually, when you say you haven't gotten to them to replace?
So they're very old. We have parts available from other very old meters, but the goal is to really have one component eventually.
Okay, so people who don't have credit cards,
Kiosks take,
Yes, yes.
kiosks take coins.
oh, they do?
So they all
All
do
the
take
new
coins,
kiosks
not
that
just
we put
credit
on
cards.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I thought they just took credit cards. Thank you, because I figured somebody in the parking office could direct him to where he could.
I'll take
He could park.
quarters.
Thank you.
On that topic, one thing that was surprising to me at the parking committee meeting that the chamber, or the parking meeting that the chamber had, a lot of people complained about the change machines not working and having issues with that a lot, which surprised me because I thought that we were in the day of credit cards and Park Mobile and didn't even realize people use the change machines, but it was a common topic that a lot of people complained about.
So I can comment on that the amount of coins that have been used has been declining rapidly over the years. I remember my first summer here, they were in total abundance because we didn't have credit cards. And they have been declining rapidly. This year, and we've had issues with the change machines, this year they were up and running. Nothing was reported to the parking department or Billy Maffei, and we had a meeting the other day where Billy said that they were all functioning properly. So I don't know, if they weren't functioning, we didn't know about it, and they're checked on a daily basis.
I'm just passing along
Yeah,
the
I know,
feedback
I
from that
know.
meeting.
I heard the report from that meeting.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Richard Cooperman, 214 Country Club Drive. I noticed we're talking about signage with regard to parking. Is there anything done about pedestrian safety on the crosswalks on the avenue? Because I cross there daily and it is not happy.
It's something we're working on, but that's not part of this program.
That's what I wanted to, okay.
Thank you.
Great question. We will follow up with that again.
Thank you.
That's a great question.
That's something I've been working on too. Thank you.
Good, 1 Grove Street. Is Richard Cooperman? Has preempted my question, which is fine. But, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that's not part of the program. But I was wondering if we're going to spend potentially over $200,000 that we could agree, similar to Dewey Beach, Lewis, even North Shores has spent some money on these sort of portable, they're like sawhorses in the crosswalks on Ocean Drive to think about that. I'm just giving my own estimate. When traffic's moderate, close to 3/4 of the cars ignore the brick crosswalks. And I've learned that in Delaware, well, in Sussex County, Delaware anyway, a pedestrian has to be physically in the crosswalk.
That's state law.
State law, thank you, Susan. Before the car is obligated to stop and yield. So you sort of have to put one of your limbs into the crosswalk. When a pedestrian is at the crosswalk, technically the car has no obligation to yield. So I'm hoping if we were ever to get these signs, they would say yield to pedestrians at crosswalk, the way they've done in, I believe, in Lewis, as opposed to yield to pedestrians in crosswalk. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. See you in October.
Thank you, John.
Okay, next, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
I think at the last board meeting, we were asked to present a little where we are on a kind of an update on our stormwater projects for this year. So that's the intention of this presentation, kind of go through all of our 2020, our major stormwater projects and initiatives that we're doing this year. There's just a listing. I'll talk about it, each individual one here in a second. But almost $1 million worth of projects focused primarily on stormwater, both water quality and water quantity. Oops, sorry. So the first one we've talked about before, probably a month or so ago, was the water quality sampling that we just finished at in the kind of the business district down Rehoboth Avenue and the ocean blocks of Baltimore and Wilmington. As you'll recall, the effort was cleaning the pipes and then have the samples taken after a rain with an effort to try to identify the source of the bacteria that was identified for us the year before. All of that is a result of a permit requirement from the ocean outfall. So we did the overall sampling last year, and then this year we're trying to do the source determination, figure out what exactly is causing our bacteria levels to be higher than we would hope. We had about $55,000 in the budget for that. We actually Evan got us half of that via a DENREC grant, which helps considerably. And as I said, the sampling's been completed. We hope to have the test results back from our consultant middle of next month. The second project I'll talk about this evening is the lining of the stormwater pipes on Delaware Avenue and under the Boardwalk, kind of between Wilmington Avenue and Brooklyn. As many of you saw last year, the pictures of the inside of the pipe. It's an old corrugated metal pipe. The bottom of the pipe, the invert, is almost completely deteriorated and gone in many locations. So this system will come in, line it with a cured-in-place pipe. And again, we brought the award information to you last time, and it's been awarded to SAK Construction. They expect to start work, as the city manager said in her report, mid-October, and we think they'll be finished before Thanksgiving. Another project we have upcoming this year, we got into the budget for this year, is kind of a start of a citywide inspection and assessment of our stormwater infrastructure. We had locations on most of our infrastructure, but we didn't have condition assessments. So this would involve various methods. One is, we did some testing of it, I think Commissioner Schlosser in your neighborhood last year, an acoustical test where you put a sounder in one end and a receiver in the other, and it can kind of give you an indication of whether or not that pipe is clogged, or not so much condition of the pipe, but just whether it's clogged. We also have they call a camera on a stick, which we'll use in short distances and straight lines. You can just stick a camera down there. It's got a big, powerful light on it. We can tell what the condition of that pipe is and if it's free-flowing or has debris in it. And then we also have the typical cleaning and videoing where we run a camera down it and to get a good assessment of the condition of the pipe. You can see a couple of samples there are what we typically find. One at the top, the joints are coming apart. We see that a lot in the city, causing a lot of settlement, a lot of sinkholes developing above the pipe in our streets. And then I think many of you saw the picture of the root ball we took out of Wilmington Avenue when we were cleaning it for the sampling to take place. And there's a sample of what you see a lot in. Anytime there's a crack and around trees and the roots get into the pipe and start causing us problems. So we had $200,000 in the budget for this year to do the inspection and assessments. We also have applied for a $50,000 surface water planning grant from DENREC, which we feel pretty optimistic about. And we're currently in the process of prioritizing which areas we want to focus our effort on, where we know we have some road failures or sinkholes developing. We'll get those so we can identify what our fix next year would be in order to take care of the problem. Another one you may not say why it's at stormwater, our salt shed. As you know, right now we stockpile our salt over at the Streets Yard. It's over near the canal, and it's uncovered, so we have to put tarps over it. So this will enable us to get our salt stockpile over into the recycle yard. We had the concrete pad that you had approved 2 years ago, I think. And now we'll get that covered, and we put salt over there. It stops the rain from causing that salt to run off and ultimately get to the canal or another body of water. So again, it's in this year's budget, And we just got the permit in order for construction to start, so that should be starting here pretty soon. And then throughout the city, we did a lot of what I call spot repairs over the past year, where we've had some standing water issues or drainage issues. Did several along Henlopen Avenue where the new shoulder wasn't draining properly, so we were able to do some work on shoulders to try to help that out. First Street is a difficult one for us. So we put a small inlet on the west side. We're going to come back in with a larger inlet on the east side to hopefully take care of that. You see our Grove Park bike trail there, which I guess has been a low-lying area for years. So we just signed a contract to have an inlet placed there and drain it over to the existing stormwater pipe on Henlopen Avenue. So that'll drain, and we won't have that obstacle for all of our bicyclists or anyone else using the park. And finally, the same kind of thing out on the Scarborough Extended Rain Garden. I think we call it a rain garden. It's really more of a frog garden right now. We have a lot of frogs in there. Clearly wasn't designed for those 3 or 4 new houses that were built right there on that corner, and it just has not performed. So we're going to tie that into the existing storm drain, physically tie it in, as opposed to have it as infiltration basin.
So, Kevin, real quick.
The rain gardens are going to go away?
It's going to still be there. We'll still have the trees and the shrubs. It'll just now be similar to what we have out here. You'll have the mulch at the bottom, but it'll have a physical drain pipe running it over. So you'll get some infiltration, but it's just not infiltrating fast enough. So we want to
I
get
think
the
with
overflow.
the new auto place there, that'll help a lot. Right, too.
Yeah, we get a lot of runoff off of Route 1, obviously.
Kevin, we've just had neighbors and myself and others have reported the same situation in North Rehoboth in the Pines on Kent Street, Kent and Fourth. And I didn't realize you were making spot repairs and projects. So what can we do about, there's neighbors on Kent Street that can't even get into their house because of standing water similar to this. Is there anything we can do in the interim? I know you're going to talk about the study, the bigger picture, but what can we do in the interim on Kent Street and Kent and Fourth?
So each one is so individual, because I think if I think I know where you're talking about, you've got asphalt and curb all the way around. So in these cases, the spot repairs right there we're able to make is to get it to infiltrate. So we redo the shoulder basically and put a more porous layer in there so it'll drain down. To do that through asphalt, then you're cutting asphalt, and we really don't want to get in that business. Or to tie it into a storm drain, again, that's a significant event like we're trying to do here, where
There are no storm drains, if you recall, and that's
correct.
the area where there are no
but
storm
you're going to go a long way to get to it.
Right.
And we'll talk about that one in a minute.
Yeah. So is there anything like that you can look at and do something, try to do something? I get that it's complicated. I really do. But these guys, this has been a decade-long problem in that area. And you're having mosquitoes pool there. It's a pretty big issue for those folks. So, and again, they can't even get to their house in some cases after rainfall. So I don't know if that's something you can look at, while the study is coming up with the long-term solution. I think it would be helpful for that part of the community. I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't look optimistic.
I don't, because if it's where I'm thinking
okay.
it is, it's a very tough temporary kind of fix.
Yeah.
It involves putting in a bunch of pipe, and I'm not sure we're really ready to do that.
Okay. Oh, I know you're going to talk about that in the
Yeah,
next slide.
it might be the next
one, the next slide. So thank you.
Okay, no, the next one after this, I think. So one of the other things that Evan has talked to you several times about is this Resilient Communities Partnership that we're a part of. We're one of 6, and I guess we took the lead of it about a year or so ago. The 6 coastal communities, Evan got us a technical assistance grant for about $75,000 to put together some things for the coastal communities that have very similar needs. So some of the objectives, as you can see, just some best management practices for coastal communities, some suggested code modifications, things like that would be similar to the 6 communities that are part of this. We expect the final report from the consultant middle of December. And from the interim things we've seen, they're giving us some good ideas on especially the best management practices and things that we can use going forward. The other thing I would mention is this impervious area delineations. We have a lot of impervious area in the city of Rehoboth Beach, just because our lots are small, our houses are big, and we got a lot of paving. So it's hard, or we'll be able to use that to try to come up with, if we want to go toward a stormwater utility, that'll give us a basis of fact to then be able to implement whatever that would happen to be. But you need to be able to base it on something. So we could do kind of an impervious area study. We can use that information to kind of develop something that we could do to help generate a funding stream for these types of repairs for the stormwater infrastructure. But that's a discussion for another day. This is the feasibility study for that watershed 40 in that, I say the Deer Park area. I think it has some other names as well. But in that part of town, there is no stormwater infrastructure there, so we do have a situation where we have a lot of ponding. You know, the good thing about having the paving and the curb is, it's nice paving and curb, but it doesn't give a place for the water to drain to, whereas in places that have stone shoulders, we have a little bit easier way of trying to help that infiltrate. But we're looking at that now. We have a consultant. The data collection's underway. He's been out there with the survey folks already. So, like I said, we hope to have something from them ready that we could use in our budget process for the upcoming year.
This is the area I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
The Kent
right.
Street,
Mhm.
Sussex. Okay.
Yep, sure.
Thank you.
One of the other things that didn't cost us any money, but we were working with the city solicitor to come up with some code revisions because our lots are typically 5,000 square feet, and the Sussex Conservation District Stormwater Management Code is written around if you disturb 5,000 square feet or greater, you have to implement certain stormwater protection measures. Silt fence, stabilized construction entrances, all the good standard common standard construction procedures or processes that you see out on a larger lot. Well, because of our restricted size, they aren't going to enforce that on disturbances less than 5,000 square feet. So we're in the process of rewriting our code so it will apply to, I think we got it down to about 2,500 square feet in order to hopefully prevent what you see in some of those pictures where it rains and just runs out into the street, runs out into the storm drain, then runs out into one of the lakes or the canal or the ocean. So we're working on that, hope to have that in place fairly soon.
And Ken, I think that's a very important one. That's one that I know that the Save Our Lakes Board has talked about stormwater control for a long time, and we actually invited Jessica Watson from this Conservation District to speak to the Planning Commission a few months ago to really talk about what criteria they use. And at the time, I invited her in because we were looking at some projects that were in their bailiwick that were over 5,000 square feet, and I wanted to know where in the process they were. But at the same time, we talked briefly about the fact that we would be doing something locally. So I think this is great and much needed.
Mm-hmm. And the building and licensing folks have actually been telling the contractors that that you should be doing these kind of things.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do,
Right.
and
Yeah.
several of them are stepping up and
Well,
doing
that's good.
it. But we want to be able to hammer the ones that don't because it causes us such a mess.
Yeah.
This is Silver Lake and Lake Comegy's management plan is something that is in its initial stages right now. But basically, the state came to us, the county, and Dewey to put together a three-party team because all three entities touch, Silver Lake and Lake Comegy's. So they wanted to come up with a management plan for the lake. They said you put together your team, each pony up $16,000, and the state will probably come up with a matching grant for the $50,000, and they did. So now we've taken our communities, Dewey, Sussex, and us, and our 50 and the state's 50. Now we've gone to the Corps of Engineers and said, hey, can you, we've got this project we'd like you to manage for us. So they've thrown in $100,000. So now we had about $200,000 project where they're going to develop a management plan for Silver Lake and Lake Comegy's. It's not entirely a stormwater project, but there's a large component of stormwater in that. Obviously, the lake level impacts whether our storm drains can drain into the lake or not, causes issues with basements and all those kind of things. So we're working on scoping documents with DENREC, the Corps, and our other two partners. And hopefully get that underway this winter. It'll probably take about a year to 18 months to finish that project. But they're going to look at water quality issues as well because so many folks drain stormwater into the lake. And that's it, subject to your questions.
That was a great update.
Thank you.
Very good. Are all the departments going to do an update on their capital? Sorry, Kevin, you're setting a standard. Everybody's going to be mad at you now, but I thought this was outstanding, you know, halfway through the budget year to give it an update like this. So I'd love to hear from the other departments. If, I don't know if anybody else would, but maybe once, you know, maybe every commissioners meet, you know.
Yeah, well, you have
workshop.
the monthly update of the CIP status, so.
Yeah, I read it,
but
believe me,
this is the main
religiously.
one.
This was good, though, really good, yeah. And the report is outstanding, too. It's very informative. I just found this really extra informative,
Yeah, this
so
is
thank
probably
you.
the lion's share of the CIP.
It is, yeah.
And so, yeah, having
really
this
is.
update is just wonderful, and
It is.
congratulations on the great work you guys
Yeah.
are doing.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you, Kevin.
Well done. Good briefing, good
Thanks,
briefing.
Kevin.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Sally Foreman. I'm founder and president of Save Our Lakes Alliance 3, and all of these issues are right up our alley. The first thing I want to do is thank Stan Mills for his service. He is one of the people we went to in many areas that relate to the work we do, and we partnered on the signs that you see on the drains and some other things. So just publicly, I haven't thanked Stan, so this gives me the opportunity to do that. The other thing I wanted to thank is thank Kevin and also Evan, the fact that you really are addressing the runoff issues. This is something we've talked over many years about, and it's really important. And I'm happy you're doing it in a very conservative way, because I think it will make a big difference in terms of the outcome of what goes into the lakes and into the streets. So that's really terrific. I know eventually you're going to do a more comprehensive stormwater infrastructure plan. Is that correct?
Well, we're going to assess the condition of our stormwater infrastructure. I don't
Yeah.
know that we would call that a plan.
And in the process, there used to be a map, a diagram in the old commissioner's room in City Hall that showed all of where the drains went throughout the city. And I don't know what happened to that. Do you know about that?
Yeah, certainly that map can be redone now with our GIS system. I don't know where the map is, but.
Because I think one of the scopes of work was to map those drains, and that at least would be a reference point as to what's already there, plus whatever additional work you would be doing on that. So I think it'd be helpful to have that. And the other thing that I'm certainly not an expert in, but as you develop your new and updated stormwater plans, there are some wonderful new technology out there that actually allows you to retain the flow of the water from drains to where the final point is. And I know there's a big project in Wilmington that's addressing this, and it's not a retention pond, but it's a special device that absorbs what comes from the storm drain and has a slow flow to its final point. And that's just something I think would be worth looking at. Maybe you already know about it, and we could certainly do some research on it as well. But just a way to not have everything go into the lake full force. And the other part of that is including some kind of filtering devices or storm scepters, which I think I've talked with you in our initial meeting last year, which would certainly help the quality of the water in the lakes tremendously. So I hope you're looking at that. And my final comment is SOLA has created a $3,000 a year matching grant for property owners who do something to improve the runoff from their house and that eventually goes into the lake. And we did award that last year to someone who did a major renovation along the shoreline of Silver Lake. They spent a lot more than their matching $3,000, but it really does make a difference. And it can be a project as simple as a rain garden. It can be putting in a pervious surface driveway or surface generally, patios or whatever you're doing. And our deadline to receive that this year is September 30th. Nobody has applied this year. We put a notice in the city paper, we put it in the Cape Gazette, We put it on our website, we put it to all of our members and all property owners around the lake, and nobody has applied. So maybe there's a way to partner and work with you. I know as you develop the required lakes management plan, that's another area that would be of interest in terms of people who can improve their property. So if you can help us get the word out in any way you can think of, call me or send me an email, and that would be terrific.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sally. So, a question, Kevin, that Sally raised. Well, she raised several very important questions. So in the analysis that you talked about that's going to be going on, is this mapping going to be a part of that?
So we have that. We have it electronically. I'm not familiar with the hard copy that she referenced.
Something that
but-
goes up on the wall.
Okay, but we have
basement or something.
yeah, but we have it electronically. So I mean, we look at it every day.
So you have that.
So we know where the items are. We don't have really an assessment, condition assessment, which is what we're trying to do. So
Right.
we think we know pretty. Although I will admit, we found one 2 weeks ago that wasn't on that system, and we didn't know existed. It's in somebody's backyard over on Country Club. Yeah, might have been along to the golf course years ago or something. But yeah, we do find them. Yeah, but you're right. We do have it electronically on our asset management database, and we can certainly print a big map out if someone would want.
It'd be useful to have that. It'd be useful to have it also on the website, maybe.
And we have it for water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, and stormwater.
Yes, Frank Cooper, 96 East Lake Drive. Is there a ability for citizens to participate in the ongoing plan for Silver Lake?
Yeah, so the Corps, when they do their project management, they will have a stakeholders group as well. So we talked to them already about some groups. Obviously, SOLA 3 is on that list of who they want to reach out to, but there'll be a public notice, they'll be asked for participation and the like, but they'll develop stakeholders to have public participation in that development.
Super, I'm glad to
Yeah.
see you doing all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. It was very insightful. The next on the agenda is discussion of public participation in the commissioner's budget process.
Yeah, I'll take that, Mayor. Thanks for putting on the agenda. We'll just take a few minutes on this today and then maybe continue. But basically, you have a handout, and there's a handout for the public as well. But some of the background, as most folks know, and for the two new commissioners, the commissioners typically around the fall time frame, probably in the next couple meetings, we provide high-level guidance to city manager on budget priorities, and then obviously the city manager prepares a budget, which we discuss publicly in a series of special meetings to include the capital improvement plan, of which you were just briefed on. And we do this publicly, and we do it during the fall and winter timeframe. And we get folks who live here, who are here during the winter, that come to the meetings. But we don't really right now do a whole lot of outreach to the 80% of our community who can't come to meetings full time as to the budget. So a couple discussion points on that. Again, although we do discuss the budget, we have a series of meetings on it, and to get priorities and to work it through with the city manager. Again, we don't have the opportunity for a lot of our 80% who don't live here full time to participate and give us feedback. According to most best practices, efficient budget processes incorporate multiple channels to get feedback from the community, the constituents. And one of the ways is obviously discussing it in public, which we do, but also to have a continuous update when you do have these meetings. But one of the areas that everything I've read in terms of best practices to include is some sort of survey to get public input into the budget process and priorities, et cetera. Even ICMA, which the mayor and I know the city manager use to obtain best practices for our operational practices, basically said there should be kind of a multi-channel approach to getting feedback to the budget that's very participatory, transparent, and allows us to get input from the citizens. Look, I mean, we're elected to represent the citizens, but we don't have clearly all the good ideas on what we should be doing, and would like to get more input. So basically, I just wanted to tee up for discussion among the commissioners. How can we be absolutely sure that the budget is meeting, our community priorities, and how can we better communicate with the public on these priorities? And then the second thing, just for discussion, is should we consider a broader multi-channel approach to encourage enhanced public engagement, transparency, and feedback into this process? So, and specifically, should we do some sort of survey? We have tools to do that. We have email addresses. So I don't see a downside to doing it personally, but I just wanted to tee it up for discussion as we're getting ready to move into budget discussions here for the 2021 session. So I'm open to any suggestions or comments on whether we should include this as part of our communication and public engagement process this year, include some sort of survey.
If you don't mind, I'll speak to that.
Sure.
I mean, first of all, the budget process is starting already right now, and the city manager is working with her staff over the next 3 months to get budget ideas, numbers, wish lists from the various different departments, and then she puts together that budget for us. And then we go over it, and I think as we start to have our discussions on her preliminary budget in January, sometimes wish lists or things that we focus on come up at that point in time, and I think that's very good. Obviously, over the last couple of years, the city manager's been able to implement the CIP, so we've got a good plan for what's going forward, and I think it's, I think it's great to get input from the public, but, I think it's, this budget is the budget for the city, but it's really the operational budget that the city manager and her staff puts together. And, the things that we might want to, or the public may want, are very important. One of the things I was thinking about is we have this mind mixer. We could put a couple of questions out on that. The CDP, or the Planning Commission, just did a survey, and I think Susan said 43 questions or something like that on it. And there's a lot of questions. But there may be a brief one that we could put out, something like that, and you could work with maybe Chris on putting something like that together. But, going out and I don't know that this is exactly what you're saying, is going out in September, October, and asking the public what their budget thoughts are, I think gets us away from what the city manager is going to be doing for the next 3 months. And so I think the ideas are good. I think we can probably, some of the things that you've heard from the public, maybe those are the mind mixer questions we could create. And maybe we have 2 or 3 a month, and we could get input that way, and so that we could have the input as we go into January. But I think the most important part of the budget process is coming from the city manager through the staff of the things that are needed to operate the city on a daily basis.
May I just add also that, and I've been looking at Mr. Bowman for 2 hours. So I meet with residents, you meet with constituents, and Kevin and I recently met with Mr. Bowman because there's a problem with his street, and it needs to be repaved, and we know that. But in order to do that, we're looking at a study further. So as I meet with folks, my point is you do, and that's what I know that you bring to the budget meetings, things that you hear, things that you know not only yourself might have. I hate to call it a wish list, Mayor, because no, that's okay, but I tell my staff that you can't wish for anything. I need to hear things you definitely need. But no, things that you want done, and then of course you hear things from everyone. One of the things that we did do, which I think is extremely important, and not only the 5-year plan, the CIP, anyone can pick up that manual. What Evan was able to do with that his first year here, you know, with photographs and, yeah, it's a great tool to be able to see, which is our 5-year timeline. And sometimes, as you know, those items are moved up or delayed or, but the other thing that we've been able to do with Munis and that Bert has been implementing and pushing out is publishing not only data in the raw form, so not only numbers that, you know, people don't necessarily want to sit and read, but we have broken those down to provide a way for the public to understand and use that data through maps, through visualizations, through different pie charts that you've seen recently. So we try to make that as transparent as possible for just somebody who doesn't see that every day like we do. The budget, as you may know, used to come across as a simple spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet with not too much explanation in it, in an Excel format. So now we have different tools that we're able to accommodate. And Mind Mixer certainly can be used for the surveys that you're referring to, and any other tool that we have that's available to us through the website. But I think that the forward thinking that we have here and the staff has can give you that comfort level, hopefully, to relieve some of that. And the public is certainly available and welcome to come to any meeting. And we have the information now on the website. Not saying that it's not good, but we already do some of that. I'm just trying to point some of the things out for you.
Yeah, I think over the past 2 years, the transparency on the budget, the capital improvement plan, and the reports on the progress are outstanding.
And that's
I don't know
something
if
that you
everybody
wanted
knows they're
from the
out there,
beginning.
but
Yep.
they're outstanding. I mean, so I'm such a budget geek. I read them every single. I really do. So don't think at least one person's reading every single one of them every month. I like them, but I like the idea of the Mind Mixer. Believe me, I was not thinking of a 43 question
I wanna
survey
address that.
by any means. I was just thinking kind of like, here's our, you know, our goals and plans from which, you know, every budget process needs to really be aligned with your goals, your vision and goals and you know, objectives. So I was envisioning more, like you said, Mary, like a few questions, just, hey, you know, any thoughts on this direction, or just that type of thing, not like a 43 questions, or 44 question survey. I was just envisioning kind of something out there that could be sent to the, you know, the non-full-time residents, so they at least have an opportunity to look at it and think about it and provide some input. So
I'd like to add some things to this, because I think we have a great timing opportunity here. First of all, I totally agree that the budget should include a strategic perspective and links to broad goals and all that, which is why when I believe you and former Commissioner Legree presented a framework for the budget in fiscal 19 that you specifically brought in, reviewing the goals and priorities of the CDP. So, of course, at the time, that was music to my ears. And at that point, you were looking at the goals that had been set in the CDP of 2010. Well, I believe we have a perfect opportunity here to look at the survey results of the CDP, the survey that's just been completed, as we start the current budget process, because that is much more forward-thinking than looking at the 2010 CDP. And yes, within the 45 questions, 44, 45, I counted no fewer than 14 that are you know, very strategically oriented to things that have budget implications. So I would like to see us really look at the data reveal and the analysis of that comes from our consultant next month, because it'll come, I think, in good timing to then feed into the budget process and sort of go from there to determine what else, you know, we might need. And I also have to say, I think the Mind Mixer platform, and I think the work the staff has done on that is wonderful. And I know that, you know, for many years, former Commissioner Sharp kept talking about public opinion research. So we have all the tools to do that, you know, now. And I think we should make use of what we have. The other thing I'll say about the CDP survey is, people may have a little bit of survey fatigue after having completed it. I mean, it was, the average length of time to complete that was 25 minutes, you know, for each person. So if we can make multiple use of that and use it not just for the CDP process, but use it to inform our budget process, then we've made those people's time much more efficient.
Absolutely. If you could break, I'm sorry, just to follow it, just with Susan, if you could break it out into those, I think you said, what, 13 categories or whatever?
I
that
counted about
budget?
14 that I thought were.
If there's a way to when you give the presentation in October
It won't be me.
highlight you, whoever's giving it.
It'll be our consultant, but.
Yeah, if they could highlight that, I
Right.
mean, I think that would be a really great starting point as well. Sorry, Dick, I just.
No, I just wanted to say that I think this is a very important discussion that we're having now, and thank you for bringing it up. And because we need to be so conscious always as we're moving ahead, making decisions, that there are a lot of folks that can't come to these meetings. They may be watching, but they don't necessarily find easy avenues to provide input to us. So I think it's very important that we're conscious of that and working toward that end. You know, we also have a number of very hardworking committees
Yes,
that are out there, and you know, these are a variety of citizens and business people, employees in town, that we also need to take advantage of their thoughts about the work that they're doing on those committees and where there are budget implications. I mean, I don't think we want a free-for-all of ideas, because, you know, you ask 100 people, you're going to get 100
Right.
ideas, and they don't necessarily fit anywhere. But I think if we go to these, some of our ongoing, hardworking groups and utilize them, that is yet another avenue as we're looking at the avenues that we have.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. That's great. We have commissioner comments, if I can make a couple. Just to let you know, this morning, the 7 mayors from, well, actually only 6 out of the 7 mayors from the Association of Coastal Towns was down in Bethany with Senator Carper. And Senator Carper had a large contingent of people from the Army Corps of Engineers, and they were down in Bethany to take a look at the beach in Bethany, because they're going to, obviously, they're going to do the beach replenishment up here in Rehoboth and Dewey starting this fall. But Bethany, I don't know if any of you have been down there recently, their beach is pretty small, and it was a little stormy out in the water today, but their dunes look spectacular, and they've got a brand-new hotel, and I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's pretty spectacular itself. But their dunes are very good, and then everybody that was on the beach this morning was sitting up against the snow fence of the dunes, so they need it probably more than we do. But he was down there just introducing the new director of the Philadelphia office of the Army Corps of Engineers, and then there were a lot of different engineers that were there just to see the process, so that was very helpful. And we, as the Association of Coastal Towns, kind of pointed out the things that we really need, and the fact that the number 2 industry down here in Sussex County, as well as, you know, most of the state, is tourism, and people come down to this end of the state for the beaches, for the waterways. We don't have a dredging problem in Rehoboth, but most of the other communities have trouble with the Back Bay overflow from you know, sea level rise. We're getting a little bit of that on the ocean side, but we don't get anything like South Bethany or Lewis or even Dewey gets from the Bay side. So we were just trying to talk to them about the needs that we have for ACT. And then there was a meeting of the mayors and the city managers right after that, and Carper went on for a tour up the street, and we talked further about the needs and having our lobbyists speak not only with the state, not only with the federal government, but the county government about our needs from a money perspective, because there's always the thought that the federal government or the state government may say to the communities that we want you to put some money up for beach replenishment as well as dredging. Right now, on beach replenishment, the federal government pays 65% and the state government pays 35%. which is spectacular for us because these are multi-million-dollar projects. But there may be some time in the future that the municipalities may be asked to put money into it. And one of the things, of the 7 or 8 things that the county is thinking about for their accommodations tax is dredging, waterways, as well as replenishment type stuff that we need. But, you know, they're talking about their entire accommodations tax being about $1.3 million, and they have to think about the western side of the county as well as the eastern side of the county, so it's going to be spread pretty thin. But those are all interesting things that I had from that, and I wanted to bring to your attention. Anybody else? Commissioner?
Yeah, just a brief comment. I want to go on record to thank our representative and speaker, Pete Schwarzkopf, for providing a Moby mat on Stokely, or Stockley? Stokely.
Spelled Stockley.
Yes. Recently, Pete gave me a call and he said, I'll make a trade with the city. I'll provide funds for a Moby mat if you could get a couple of bike racks down there. Well, thanks to city manager and her team, we got 2 or 3 new bike racks there almost overnight. And the Moby mat was there within
2-3 days.
a few days. And the representative was down there and he couldn't believe that we had responded so quickly. And so he said, and we need to remember this, come spring, come back to me, I will get you more of those.
Oh, they have been very popular. So many
Yes,
people
they're
have stopped and
incredibly
talked to me
popular,
about
and
them.
they are so helpful and
very
useful
much so, yeah.
for so many of us that are not getting younger as we're trudging through the sand to get to the beach. Yeah, and so let us remember that the representative wants to help, and he made that commitment.
Yeah, I had the same conversation with him afterwards, and, you know, I think he was talking about a couple to a few. And I think there's always competition, I think, to an extent, between Representative Schwarzkopf and Senator Lopez in providing money to certain, so we may be able to get 2 to 4.
Yeah.
If
We
do
use that
something
to our
like that.
advantage.
Use that to our advantage, but thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, as well as, you know, working with Representative Schwarzkopf, because I think that was great. And I think he was impressed when he sent out that email about how quickly the staff was able to act
Yeah,
on that.
thanks to your team, Sharon.
You know, it just,
They're
they
always
did a great
amazing.
job.
I just have 2 things for the next, for our next workshop agenda. One, I'd like to have an agenda item for the administrative variance with the updates that Glenn was working on. And secondly, I'd really like to get an update on the, what we're doing about the pedestrian, per Suzanne and Richard. It was on my notes as well, but what we're doing with the pedestrian crosswalks. I mean, I can't tell you how many near accidents I've seen and how many near times I've seen pedestrians almost get hit, to include myself. You know, it's not just about me, but I'm telling you, I've had personal experience. So I'd like to hear, Mayor, you said we're doing something about it. I'd like to have an agenda item to hear what we are doing and what we can do.
Yeah, I think
This is a pretty big issue.
it'd be good for discussion. I mean, part of the problem has always been when streetscape was brought about and we
Yeah.
did those brick crosswalks and the concrete on either side, they're very hard to see. I mean, if you're in a car, doesn't jump out at you that that's a crosswalk. It's always been a problem. We tried to put some reflective tape down there, and that lasted for a while, but it's pretty much gone at this point. So, yeah, I think a discussion on that will be important.
And just to add to that, well, Rehoboth Avenue and some of our business streets are certainly deserving of a serious look at this. And we need to continue to look seriously. State Road, while it is a DelDOT road, we have increasing amounts of bicycle and pedestrian traffic there. And we need to look at that and work with DelDOT and others to look at pedestrian and bicycle safety. We are currently by signage sending all of the bicyclists across State Road at Hickman and Canal Street, and yet there is no kind of a crosswalk. There's no indicated safety, and State Road is busy, both directions. People are going to the highway, coming off the highway. Right.
Yeah,
additional area.
some of the issues, and especially with something like State Road, are sidewalks. that are non-existent, and, you know, you need ADA compliance to have ramps,
So a
so
crosswalk needs to go
somewhere.
to somewhere
Yeah,
safe, but.
yeah. That's an issue.
But we
and-
need to
and
look at that.
We're looking at that. And I've spoken to Bill Maffey from the Parking Department a number of times about our crosswalks. And I asked specifically about the silent policeman. And unfortunately, on Rehoboth Avenue, there's so much traffic and truck traffic and car traffic. I mean, I drive down Rehoboth Avenue, and some people are just driving down the middle of the road. And so if you had one of those silent policemen, like, for example, right out here, they run over it. Apparently, the one over on Surf Avenue gets a lot of use and a number of replacements. And those are, he said, $400 to $500 a piece. So a lot of it has to do with the traffic and the width of the streets, but I think it's something, you know, that we're looking at. I know the city manager and the staff is looking at. We've talked over the last couple of years about putting more crosswalks down King Charles beyond the church, and I think that's probably something. There may be, I think they have them already on Scarborough, they have them on Bayard, but they don't have them on King Charles on the south side. So I think there are areas that the city manager is working with the staff on that. I don't think there's a specific plan, like we're gonna do this street and that street and that street. It comes down to timing, because they get really busy about putting the meters back up and so on and so forth. But I'm sure that's something that we can look towards. And again, maybe in the budget process, find the money for.
So we can get an update on what we are looking at and some thoughts at the next meeting. Great, thanks.
And I think it's important to address it in conjunction with what we're going to be talking about with budget needs for the other signage, because, you know, we want to put the safety issues at the forefront of some of this as well. So I think to look at it all together is a good thing to do.
Yep. And let's see. Is that it for commissioner comments? Great. The next workshop meeting is the 7th. It's a Monday. And the next regular meeting is the 18th. Those are both in October. And is there any citizen comment?
Well, I have a couple
sure.
things first, sorry. First, is there any kind of date yet for the data reveal for the CDB survey, because that's going to be a joint meeting between us and?
You know, I was thinking, and I've been speaking about the city manager with this, was thinking about the week of October 28th.
Yeah.
As data reveal, and I don't think our consultant can be here on the Friday, but any day that week.
Could we go ahead and set that, at least a preferred date for ourselves?
It's Monday would be best, which is the 28th.
That would be good. That would be good for me.
Does that work? I mean, I think it's very important that the Planning Commission and the regular commission.
I just think the more notice we have, because I don't know if, you know, what everybody's schedule is, but the more notice we have for both groups, the better. So.
All right.
Monday at 9, is that where you're,
I don't know.
10, or what are we thinking about time-wise?
I don't know.
Tony Sharp's no longer here, so we can meet at 9.
Yeah, right.
Just kidding. I was just kidding.
Right.
And hopefully Tony's not watching.
Right.
It's up to, you know, everybody here. Does that work for you, Ann? Like 9 o'clock?
Parks and Shade Tree in the afternoon,
Yeah,
yes.
so how about 9 o'clock?
9.
9 o'clock on the 28th? And that's a joint meeting, and I'm not sure
Day
how
is
we'll
that, a
be set
Monday?
up.
It's a Monday.
Monday.
I prefer 10 o'clock. I'll take up Tony's mantle, Tony's. Is there any objection to doing it 10 o'clock as opposed to 9?
10 a.m. would be fine, we just have to make sure we're not
Yeah, I think
much
some of
more
that
than
depends
3
on
hours.
on Debbie's availability as
Yeah,
well.
we'll check with
I
Debbie,
think we
too.
should-
And if that gives us enough time.
So, yeah,
Right,
if
before
you
the other
could
meeting,
put that on your calendar, that would be great. And the city manager, 10. And city manager will contact the consultant.
right now.
And then the other thing, in terms of agenda items that you and I talked about for the workshop, is you're planning to have the slates for committee appointments to discuss that day?
Committees,
And boards.
committees, commissions, and boards.
Okay, well,
I
so there'll
should
be a
have
list
all of that.
available before that meeting and
Yeah,
at that
my,
meeting.
my hope is to get the list to the commissioners prior to the discussion on the 7th, but the vote wouldn't be until the 18th.
Right, no, I understand that. I just want to have it, and also be able to get the public's input. And the other thing too is I want to start a discussion of criteria and guidelines for committee appointments.
Yep,
If
I
we can
think
put
I
that
wrote
on-
that down
Did
in
you?
my pad that you and I spoke about before, and I was going to give that to Ann.
Okay, that's it. That's all I have.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Going once? Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.
Great to have you here again. Congratulations.